Hey guys, Sap here with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and in today's video we're going to be looking at this new Path of Vengeance. It is the first Heroes Path that actually has 3 objectives. We've basically got the objectives here to get artifacts, which is dungeon divers for a better word. We've got upgrading artifacts, which is artifact enhancement, and of course, well, I expected this, I was waiting for it, the summoning of souls as a bonus reward. The path is kind of complicated looking. We've got an Artak soul here. So this is like the second hero's path they've done where you actually can get a full soul up to like rank 5. They don't give you a rank 6. That's not so lucky. And we've got about 6 days to do this. So I'm going to be looking at the hero's path. We're going to be looking at, you know, what is the points breakdown? How does the souls translate in terms of efficiency? How many do we need? And then I also want to talk a little bit as to whether or not the path is worth it, because it's very heavily incentivized if you want the soul. And I'm not so certain that a 5-star soul on Artak is actually that valuable at all based on the available blessings. So before we get into all of that, let's have a little look at the actual math and have a little look to see about whether or not this is a good or a bad path to run. So we've got the different things here. You can see the table for the artifacts and accessories, the dungeon divers, is the same. There is no changes here like there was in the Deck of Fates. Upgrading artifacts is the same as well. You get 780 points, so you know that's always been the same. And we also have this summon souls. Now normally with a hero's path there is always one route which is always dominant and it's supported by the others. So for example, when it's summoning champions and dungeon divers, it's always kind of like the summoning that you want to do. The dungeon divers is not very good. When it's upgrading artifacts, that tends to be the dominant one. When it's training, that tends to be the dominant one. We did have one which is like training and summoning, so that was quite good. It was a lot of ways you get points. Generally speaking, dungeon divers is always the worst option for getting these coins. Now we do have the summoning souls here. I'm just going to slide this up. We've got summon souls from soul stones. You get 100 from a tier 1, 1,500 from a tier 2, and 7,500 from a tier 3. Now, if we're going to look at how this compares to sort of normal shards like Ancient, Void, and Sacred to see how that compares. But I can tell you now that 100 for a tier 1 is going to be difficult. So let's have a look at the overall rewards here. What have we got? We've basically got 2 legendary books, but you have to get at least 1 key. So you can probably use your starter key here that everyone gets and work your way down. If all you care about is 1 legendary book, it's not a bad path, right? You can basically just go straight here, get the chicken, and get your legendary book. 1 legendary book. If you don't care about the Artak soul, that's an option. But obviously, if you need to get the 40,000, the 5-star, they've structured it in a way where you go to 2, then to 3, then to 4, then to 5, and each of these paths unlock a key. So you have to go all the way down to the end of every single path. I don't think you need both keys to get to this dude. That's my understanding. I don't really think you need to. I think once you've unlocked one of these keys, you can get to the sort of avatar if you want it. If you just care about oil, you don't even care about the rest. There is some tier 2 artifact ascension oil that doesn't even need keys, so that's just like about 5,000 coins, which is not too bad if I'm being honest. That's not so difficult. Now what I do want to point out, which is different from the Razelvarg fusion, Razelvarg was pretty much all or nothing. You kind of had to go and get the 5-star soul, or you didn't get the 5-star soul, right? There was no optional situation here. There is actually a lot of flexibility in terms of which soul do you get. Now if you don't have a 2-star soul, you can't use the 3, the 4, or the 5, right? So if you go and get the 5 and then ignore the rest, you've got to work your way up and find the souls. Now, getting legendary souls out of soul shards is very difficult. It's one of the hardest things in the game. Like a tier 1 has a 0.03% chance that it's going to be a 6-star legendary. A 0.03% chance. It's such a low attempt that you go into it expecting not to get legendaries. So if you get a 5-star, then to be honest, you could be waiting a very long time to use it. So that's a lot of resource investment. Now, I've seen some strategies thrown out there, which I think is actually quite smart, is that you skip the 2-star soul and just start at the 3-star. Because if you look in the market here and you want to sort of get a merchant, you can see a 2-star is only 40 essence. Now, 40 essence for me translates to around about 2,000 coins. That's far more accessible than the 3-star version, which I think is 120, and the 4-star, which is 300. So in terms of like an essence cost, the actual cost to get the 3, the 4, and the 5 is much higher than the 2-star. So you can save yourself one whole branch because you start with one key. So if you don't start with the 2-star, you start with the 3-star, work your way, get this, then go to the 4-star, get that, and then work your way to the 5-star. You can wait until you earn the Artak in the shop. Now, that's still delaying your investment, because if you went and got all those souls, you can't use them until you have a 2-star. They're split souls. Split souls, you have to have had the preceding star rating in order to use them. But in order to use them, you're going to have to essentially wait for the soul market to give you either a 1-star Artak into a 2-star, or if you've already got a 1-star, a 2-star Artak. But that is probably, I would say, in terms of efficiency, like we're talking, you've got 500, 1250, 2000, 4000, 9000, 3000. That's a big, another 1000 there. It's a lot of points you need to get just to get a 2-star soul, which you could probably trade for an essence. So I do think that's a good idea. I don't think 120 essence is worth saving this effort, but it is an expensive barrel. There is a tax you're paying for XP barrels. I don't rate XP barrels. I think they're a waste of time. All you really do most of the time is you save yourself 10 levels. They're used more often than not as a sort of a sniping effort in champion training tournaments. The feast is much more valuable, but there's just not many scenarios where you would use an XP barrel, because most people will take their champion to rank 6, and then you're going to basically level them up in Minotaur, getting masteries. They get to about level 48 by the time you get all your masteries. So the last 12 levels is significant, but then you're basically saying the barrel is basically giving me 12 levels. You can put them in a training pit and just give yourself a couple of weeks, right? It doesn't feel like a barrel is worth the investment. So you could decide you want to just start straight at 4 and 5, knowing that maybe eventually you'll get a 3-star. That's also a viable strategy. So what we're going to be looking at is probably paths that are a little bit more complicated to do. And I've actually changed the paths I originally had for this, so that based on this kind of concept about how you save things, because you start with a key. So as long as you start where you go, it might not be so bad. So if you've seen any of my hero path videos before, you know by now I do a full breakdown. We pull out all the numbers and we work out comparisons with existing events, and actually looks at like how much the cost element is going to be. So what I've done here is I've basically looked at the view, and I've gone, every single path is a path to the soul. So soul path 1 is to get to the 2-star soul, then path 2 to the 3, path 3 to the 4, path 4 to the 5-star soul. And what I've actually then classified as bonus is things like the legendary book and the chaos ore, the oil paths, and down the middle ones as well. They're considered bonus paths. They're not relevant to the actual Artak soul. And then we're going to construct some desirable paths depending on who you are as a player, what your focus is, whether you want the soul or not, whether you want the legendary book or not. We're going to be looking at a full attempt from 2-star all the way to 5-star. That is what I'm calling the Artak full star. So you're going to get the 2-star perfect, the 3-star split, the 4-star split, and the 5-star split. Then we're going to be looking at just the 3, 4, and 5 split, how many points you'll need to skip the first 2-star, so you buy that with sort of essence instead, and just get the 3, 4, and 5 split souls. And then we're going to look at the third route, which is just the 4 and 5, and then hope that we get enough essence or enough luck to basically acquire the Artak from the second and third star from just summoning. Because the thing is, mortal stones basically give you somewhere between 1 to 3 star on average. I think it's like 98% chance that whatever you get out of a mortal soul stone is going to be a 1 or 2 or 3 star soul. So up to 3 is reasonably accessible. I say reasonably because it's reasonably in the context of what is considered accessible for the soul stone system. You're more likely to get a 3-star legendary by quite a margin than anything higher in legendary. And then, of course, we've got things that don't require the soul. So I've got a path for 1 legendary book only. So that's just using the key to get to that 1 legendary book. Both books, because obviously you'll need to go and get that sort of extra event key. If all you care about is just the oil, how much that is going to cost you just to get the oil rewards. So these are the points requirements for each individual one. You need 122,000 for the full Artak, 100,000 for the Artak 345. So you can see you're saving a good 20,000 or about 19,750 points by skipping that 2-star perfect soul. 80,000 for the 4 and 5. 1 legendary book is 22,500. Both legendary books are 60,750 because you have to go down one path to get another key to go down the other path. And then the oil is 5,800. And the total, if you want to complete the entire event, is 162,800 points. Begin with first, the one thing that probably most people want to know is the soul data. What are we actually getting out of this? So as I said before, we're getting 100 for immortal, 1,500 for an immortal, and 7,500 for the eternal soul stone. So how does this compare to sort of normal shards? Well, normally we'd get 9 from a mystery shard, 180 from an ancient, and 1,100 for a void, and 4,500 for sacred. So obviously we don't really have a comparison for mystery shards, but if you were to make the assumption that immortal is equal to an ancient, an immortal is equal to a void, and an eternal is equal to a sacred, it's not quite a one-to-one comparison, but it's a reasonable thing for someone to take. Well, you can see that mortal soul stones suffer a lot more here. We're getting about 8, nearly almost like 100% less on a mortal soul stone. You do get more points for a tier 2 stone, but again, tier 2 stones are much less available than tier 1 stones, and compared to void shards are much less available, although not, I think void shards are probably more inaccessible. And then obviously the eternal soul stone is very, very difficult to get one. Like, you can get 1 or 2 from selling things. I know people have said I was ludicrous for saying it takes so long. If you actually buy shards, buy stones, if you sell all of your essences and everything, then you can get hold of those eternal essences, but it's very difficult to get a tier 3 stone. Unless you get it from an event, you're not really going to get a tier 3 stone for a very long time. So, you know, this morning I woke up and I got 2 sacred shards from Clan Boss Ultra Nightmare. Now that's a lucky day, but you see my point. I could basically do Iron Twins for about 7 months and still not have enough coin to get 1 Eternal Soul Stone, but I can use 1 Clan Boss key and I can probably get my hands on a sacred shard at least once a month. At least. I'm probably expecting somewhere in the region of 3 to 4. How much are we getting? Well, we're getting almost double on a sacred shard, right? We're getting 3,000 more over a 4,500 comparison. So it basically means that the higher stones, as we've expected in the past, give you more. It's similar to the summon rush for souls. I made the point to say that the stone was more valuable than what the stone gave you, which basically means that using the stone will give you more points in events than actually getting the soul out of it, and that kind of remains here. If you use these higher stones, then you will get more of those points towards the path than not. But mortal stones are way too low. Now, this is the bit where the thumbnail comes into factor that you've probably been looking at and saying, well, what does Plarium really need to change? Most players will have mortal soul stones, and the one area where they haven't given us more points is mortal soul stones. It's such a low amount. We're going to be looking at the total you need, but the numbers you need are absolutely astronomical. It's good that they haven't made it just soul summoning and dungeon divers, but that also is an indication that the soul rates are pretty poor, because if the soul rates were good, we wouldn't have 3 different categories. So Plarium know, based on putting 3 different categories here, that it's not enough just to have soul summoning and dungeon divers, that is too extreme, that nobody would ever be able to achieve it. So if you know that and you're applying this logic, then clearly you need to summarize and get to a conclusion that souls are not available, that you haven't got enough stones, that the stone rewards are not good enough, that the amount of points you get are not enough for these events. So if you've already acknowledged that by basically putting the artifact enhancement event here as a supplementary event point generator, then maybe we need to solve the underlying current, that is, we don't get enough soul stones. We don't have enough odds out of those soul stones. The soul system is really poor for a low spender or anyone who doesn't really engage in high-end content to engage with. And you're shoving it down people's throats to the extent that they feel like they have to play it. I mean, I've got people in my community who are really frustrated by different things like this. So I think now is the time to go, do you know what? The soul system as a concept is great. Okay, I can empower my champion and give them more powerful blessings and they can do different things. I love it. That is great. It's basically another version of my champion. It's a good concept, but the problem is you've implemented it in such a sort of barren state that unless you really, really go, you can't even whale yourself to good souls. I watched Ash pull 13 tier 3 eternal soul stones, 13, and get 5-star epic after 5-star epic after 5-star epic. It's not enough. You need to fix the underlying problems and then people will actually enjoy the soul system. But right now, I haven't bothered doing Iron Twins because, to be honest, I'll get 1 stone and that stone will be a 1-star rare. What's the point? That is the negative part of this video out of the way. The odds are okay for the Immortal and Eternal, but the odds of any player who doesn't spend money having an Eternal Soul Stone is about as... It's just crazy. It's unlikely to happen. If you basically queued up 100 raid players, probably 3 of them who say they spend money will have an Eternal Soul Stone, and the 97 who say they spend a little bit of money are probably not near an Eternal Soul Stone. So that's the rant over. So that is the souls. How does it actually translate to completing the paths? Well, if you want to get the 2 to 5 star soul, you need 1,220 Mortal Soul Stones. Now, this is obviously if you don't double dip. We're going to look at each individual way of generating coins as a total separate. Obviously, you can mix them up a little bit, but just as if all you did is summon souls, 1,220. You'd need 81 tier 2 and 16 tier 3s. Do you know the value of these? They value these tier 3s at around about $20. So that's basically $325 dollars to get the Artak soul. Now, some people might say, well, it's a guaranteed soul, it's pretty good. I'm looking at that going, that's egregious. It's so bad. You know, even if this was like half, 8 would be okay. But that's a lot of stones, especially the tier 1, which is what most people will have. You know, you would get around about 18 to 20 a week. That's how many tier 1 stones. And that's doing the highest stages of Nightmare, Brutal, and Hard Hydra. That's doing Iron Twins every day, and that's using your Void keys on Sunday, basically using gems to buy an extra set of keys on Sunday. You walk away with around about 18 to 21 tier 1 stones. So just to put that in comparison, if we were doing the high-end scale, say like we were getting 20 stones a week, we would need 61 weeks of doing the game content to have earned enough Mortal Soul Stones to complete one event that happens for 1 week in a year. 61 weeks. It's more than a year. That's not enough. This is where I'm saying that the system is so barren of resources, it's so devoid of excitement and enjoyment that people are not going to want to engage in this soul system if this is the way that they're going to set it up. Let's just finish this loop here. If you want to go the 3, 4, 5, you're looking at 1,000. 800 for just the 4 to 5. If you want a legendary book, it's about 225 stones, or 3 eternal, or 15 tier 2s. To be honest, the tier 2s are more accessible than both, I would say. You're more likely going to have enough tier 2 stones to do this than you are the tier 1 and the tier 3, which tends to happen as well with the normal paths, that void shards are a little bit better than sacred and ancient just because of the way that the math works out. You know, I would definitely say I'm more likely to have 109 tier 2 stones available than 1,600 tier 1s and 22 tier 3s. It's just crazy amounts. Anyway, let's have a look at the dungeon data here. As always, the numbers are the same. You can see I did this one. We had eggs. We've got coins here. We pull out the mythical rates. We basically pull out the odds that you're going to get each individual type of artifact. And then we can translate that down into our average coin per energy. And what it always translates into is stage 20 is the best. It's not necessarily the best per energy because 16 is the best, but when you factor in, you need like 500 to 600 more runs. You also get 4-star gear instead of 5 and 6-star gear. You run stage 20 because it's just the best overall balanced. We know this is the same for like things like dungeon divers and tournament points. 20 is the even good break point because you just don't earn enough mythical gear to warrant running 10 hard if you want to play this super efficient. In terms of artifact upgrading, we run this through an average cost of upgrading. Now, this obviously is very variable. Some people will get lucky and not hit the mercy as much. Some people will need to go all the way through to the mercy of the way that the artifact upgrading goes. So we average this based on math. This is math that Senti has done like yonks ago, but I trust everything he said. I don't think anything has changed. It's around about 1.7 million silver, 1.8 million silver to take an artifact from 0 to 16, and that is obviously more expensive for accessories because jewelry is more expensive. So we can use this number along with the stars to basically determine, you know, how much silver it's going to be. So the big thing that we're going to hear is lots and lots of numbers. Let's actually first hide this because normally if you want to be efficient, you need to look at 12 to 16 upgrading. That's where you save your silver. What I've done here is I've basically pulled out all of the individual paths we're running, and then we can actually translate this into dungeon diver runs and artifact upgrading. So if all we did was use silver and got our coins that way, where would we be? Well, if you want to get the 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, you know, the full soul path, you're going to need to do 156 artifacts from 12 to 16. 156 individual artifacts, and the same for accessory for jewelry. That translates into 214 million silver on average. Now, I know that some players are going to be saying, well, it didn't really take me 250. And I know there's the whole, you know, artifacts, Wi-Fi network trick thing, but I mean, you got to do 156 of them. It's going to take you a long time if you're doing that. So if you want to get all those souls, 156. If you want to do the 3, 4, 5, it's 129 at around about 176. It's really awkward. If you want to do the 4, 5, it gets a little bit better. We've saved ourselves about a third of the overall cost, but you still need to do 140 million silver of artifact upgrading exclusively. Now, I know you can offset this with other things. I'm not denying that. I'm just giving you the numbers in terms of each individual pot. If you want one legendary book, it's actually okay. It's about 39 million silver. That's pretty good for a legendary book. If you want both books, however, it goes back up to that 107 million because obviously we've got to go back up to 78. And then, of course, the oil is actually quite cheap. You could probably do it in 10 million silver. So the oil is not too bad, but do you really want to be committing? If you want the soul, you're going to need to basically put all your efforts to getting the soul. Now, in terms of dungeon runs, well, as I mentioned, that stage 20 is the best. You can see that although you will be doing more runs of stage 16, you'll actually be saving yourself a little bit of energy, but it's not a lot. So if you want to basically get the 2, 4, 5, it's around about 4,434 stage 16 runs and about 62,000 energy. But if you go to stage 20, you can save yourself around about 500 runs and you're only really costing you another 500 energy, give or take, about 430 energy. However, if you go to stage 24, it's going to cost you about 4,000 to 5,000 more energy. Go to stage 25, we're talking 13,000 more energy. Stage 10 hard is better than 25, but it's worse than 24, and it's around about 8,000, but obviously you're going to get access to gear at 10 hard that's better than the other stages. So it depends on how much of a whale you are in terms of efficiency, but if you just care about coins, stage 20 is the way to go. We're talking 62,500 energy for the full souls, 51,000 for 3, 4, 5, and 41,000 for 4, 5, just doing dungeon divers. Legendary books about 11,000 energy, the oil is about 3,000 energy, and both books is around about 31,000 energy. This is why I said at the start of this section, there's always a dominant path, and the dominant path here is upgrading artifacts, because I'll be honest, if you gave me a choice between spending 40,000 silver, 40 million silver, or 11,000 energy, I'm going to choose the silver route. Now, what you can do, obviously, is double dip here. You can run Spider 20 and then use the silver you get from Spider 20 to upgrade your artifacts. That'll combine. So kind of like 3 separate pots of ways of earning. You can mix and match them, but, you know, you can't mix and match 200 million down to nothing. It's not possible. You can't drop your dungeon divers from 62,000 down to 1,000 energy. This is an expensive path. If you want that soul, it's expensive. I agree with a lot of the feedback. I definitely think it's probably worth you skipping Artak Perfect Soul 2 and buy it with Essence when it comes up if you really want the soul, because you can save yourself a third if you just go for the 4-5. I myself am on the fence. We'll talk about whether I go for it in a second, but definitely I'm not looking at that first path here. One thing I like to do all the time is I like to do a bit of a comparison between sort of the typical events that we get here. So we can compare it against a typical artifact enhancement of 7,000 and dungeon divers, which, you know, it varies. Sometimes it goes higher than 6,500 these days. These are the 2 breakpoints I've got. So you can pretty much see that 9 times out of 10, all of these hero paths are always worse in terms of the resources it would require, because a typical artifact enhancement now is going to cost you somewhere in the region of 30 million, give or take. That's where they've positioned it these days, at around about 20 to 30 million. The fusion, for example, they had 3. Each individual one averaged around about 20 million. So you had to spend about 60 million to get your Gnut. Here, normally, if you want to complete the artifact enhancement event completely, it's around about 28 million. So every single path pretty much is more expensive. If you did all paths, you would be spending 913%. Now, obviously, we've got to contextualize that with you'd get 2 legendary books, a 5-star Artak Soul, and a bunch of other useless rewards like barrels and Chaos Ore, because let's face it, I can go do a Hydra run and get enough clan gold to get some Chaos Ore. Chaos Ore comes from clan gold, not anywhere else really in terms of value. So really, you're kind of just like going, okay, is 2 legendary books and a 5-star perfect soul, essentially, if you get all the different souls, a 5-star Artak soul, worth 913% more investment? I would say probably not in those calculations. It looks really kind of a crazy number. And you can see it, to be honest, it pretty much trends with Dungeon Divers, although Dungeon Divers is a little bit better, but that's just because we've got 500 less points. But you can see they've kind of looked at it and set a bar for every single upgrade, right? The consistency here is they're always about 600% worse, 800%, 900% worse. Let's have a talk about why I think maybe this isn't the most craziest thing you should go for. So I want to keep this section just brief because it has been a long video so far. But the main thing I want to say is a lot of this is influenced by, do you want a 5-star soul? Now, souls are very, very powerful for champions. And I think Artak does have the niche at the moment as probably the best Ice Golem hard champion in the game by quite a margin, right? Because you get the decreased attack alongside a burn that activates on all targets. He beats Walking Tomb Drang. He beats people like Ninja because Ninja's random attacking. He beats people like even like Supreme Garlic because random attack. And you also get a lot of innate tankiness and speed and abilities from his passive. He is by far the best hard 10 burner in the game, right? You put him next to a healer, he's very good. That's what I use him for. He's also very good in Hydra, because for most players at my free-to-play, he's the first real burner activator that I have on the account. But the problem is he's all AoE, and that kind of limits his abilities a little bit. So in terms of the blessings we have available, you're not going to use Polymorphous and Arena Blessing. Brimstone would be the one that everyone thinks about, but in most scenarios, Brimstone is actually quite poor for Artak. Keeping in mind the two scenarios I've said he's absolutely MVP in, which is Ice Golem Hard and Hydra. Well, Hydra you want to have targeted Brimstone because the majority of the heads can't really activate Brimstone because either their cooldowns are too long or they don't use their active abilities. So really Brimstone is only good if you can place it consistently on the Suffering head. So for Hydra you want a single target Brimstone. And remember, if you place a Brimstone, it locks it out for all champions. So it's kind of not good to have an AoE Brimstone champion in Hydra. In the Ice Golem, Brimstone can't activate on the allies because the minions, the boss's minions, doesn't actually have an active ability. So the fact that they mention it in the description that those minions can activate Brimstone is kind of a silly thing because you can't activate Brimstone other than on the boss. So Brimstone immediately for me is like, it's not that good. Obviously, if you're fighting single target bosses, not a problem. If you're using him on, like on my free-to-play, Artak has Brimstone purely because I use him everywhere at the moment. But most accounts in the late to end game that can push for this 5-star soul, that have the resources available, are probably looking at it going, well, I don't use him in all those areas, and the areas I use him in, Brimstone is not ideal. Now, we could go for something like a Soul Reap. Soul Reap, I would say, is probably the better one, because you can basically activate it consistently on all the different things, but you've got to be careful, because, again, in Ice Golem, you don't really want to be killing those side minions too quickly because they give you access to AoE burn. If you kill them too quickly, then you lose a lot of your damage output. In Hydra, Soul Reap is pretty poor because Soul Reap is coded as AoE damage and Hydras reduce AoE incoming damage. So you don't actually get much damage at all from Soul Reap. So again, you're kind of like looking at these two MVP areas and going, neither of these are very good. Now you could go the route of going Cruelty, but I think in a post-Gnut world that we live in, Cruelty is kind of been killed a little bit by Gnut because Cruelty doesn't stack with Gnut. So Gnut is always going to be able to overcome the Cruelty value. So essentially you've got a champion with a blessing that's irrelevant. Now in Hydra it's a little bit different because obviously Gnut is single target mostly. So potentially in Hydra, Cruelty is probably a good option. But it also feels quite bad to put an epic blessing on a legendary champion. Now in terms of other options, Life Harvest is in my opinion a PvP only blessing. Ward of the Fallen is a PvP only blessing. It's kind of useless. Temporal Chains only works if the target has buffs. Neither of the two examples I've given you has buffs. Lightning Cage only works if you lose buffs, which might have some utility in Hydra, but I'll be honest, the best thing about this thing is to give you one extra buff to force a Mischief tank. You don't really want to commit your HP damage dealer to having something that just gives you one extra buff. And then you've got the Aura. Well, he doesn't have an Aura. So really, is the soul worth it on Artak? And I would probably say no. The only place that I see value is if you can time it consistently that the threshold is on the Ice Golem head to kill the Ice Golem quicker. But apart from that, for a late to end game account, Artak doesn't benefit an awful lot from a soul. Now, from an early game account, I would have better options here. I could decide that I want to use the Aura alongside another Aura champion, right? That's a great idea. That could really, really work. Maybe I don't have Gnut on my free-to-play. I do, but some others don't. So maybe Cruelty is a good option. Also, Brimstone goes up in value on sort of a progression free-to-play account because you're likely using Artak in more places, like, you know, it's not great in Spider even, because what happens if it goes on a Spiderling? They don't do active abilities. But certainly things in like Sorath, maybe places around those areas. There's a lot of places where Smite loses a lot of value. So yeah, I don't know, guys. I'm going to leave that up to you. I'm on the fence. If I do go for it, I will probably go and just get the 4 and 5 and keep the split souls for a future, maybe I'll pick up Artak, maybe, we'll see what happens. But we have got 6 days at least, so you've got plenty of time to make a decision. If you choose the Artak soul is not good for you, go get a legendary book for 22,000. That's worth the investment, right? Spend a bit of silver, maybe pull a few souls that you've got at the moment because, hey, what's the point? It's not like you get loads of them. Maybe just go run a few dungeons. There's an ice golem dungeon on at the moment. There's, lots of different things happening. Just go get a legendary book because actually that's quite good. I think it's quite worth it. I would go the left route so you get the 6-star legendary rather than the 6-star chaos. I don't know whether going to get a second legendary book is as worth it. That's a decision you need to make, but certainly one I would advise is good. And then if you've got excess, just go get one of these oils because this is a lot of energy. 60 greater oils is a lot of energy. That's something in the region of like 700 to 800 Sand Devil energy. So that's probably worth picking up as well as some extra gems. Pretty much if you don't care for the soul, the only thing you care for is getting maybe a legendary book and some oil. The rest of it doesn't matter. You don't really want the barrel. The 5-star chickens are nice, but you can go farm one of those. They're not really that difficult. And to be honest, an avatar, all that effort for an avatar seems an awful lot. The other option, of course, is you could just go, I'm only going to keep the 5-star, but I think a 4 and a 5 is very difficult to get. I think a 2 and a 3 is much more accessible. So there you go, guys. That is the Hero's Path of Vengeance. I do want to summarize the end here and say in Plarium, if you're going to be doing summoning souls, you've acknowledged here by the fact that you have put a third category in that you can't get enough points from summoning souls and dungeon divers. So you're aware that summoning soul points is not great. We don't get good rewards out of them. I mean, I'll pull a 10 pull here because I've got them. Let's just pull a 10 pull. I've got plenty of souls. I get 1,000 points. Cool. What do I get out of it? Rare, an epic, really useless one. A rare, another rare, like, where's my boosted odds? We got no 4-stars. We got no epics of any value. This is useless. Let's just do one more. Just for the video, just to prove the point that these routes need to improve. We get another rare. We get another useless epic. 1-star, 1-star. Oh, we do get a 4-star, but it's a rare. Oh, we get a legendary. Watch as all this video goes, a 1-star Candraphon, which, okay, look, a 1-star legendary is good, but you see the point. Like, we had, out of 10 tier 1s, 1 4-star. Now, I'm not saying that every Mortal Soulstone needs to give you a legendary soul, but certainly I would expect to feel it. It needs to feel better. This is not good. At least when I'm putting ancient shards, I'm getting champions that I can make food to upgrade my other champions. I'm getting something out of it. Do you know how much these rares are going to solve? Let's have a look at that 4-star. That 4-star soul that we just got. That we just picked up here. What? I think it was either Doomstride or something. 6 tier 3. 6. I can't even make 1 essence out of this. 6. Even if you decided to give us more exchange rate, so at least when we pull in these rares, we get a good exchange. Like, look at this. 5. It's 25% of 1 essence. 5. Even if I sold my entire rare catalog, I've got a lot. I've got a lot of these. If I sold my entire rare catalog here, and I've got loads of 5-stars, I can basically get 5 essence and... What is that? 5 what is it? It's like 50, 100, 50, 200, like maybe like 10 tier 2 essence. So I can get, out of all of these, I can get 10 tier 2 essence and about 5 tier 1 essence. If I want a 6-star split soul, I need 300 tier 2 essence for a legendary. And my entire backlog of extremely high star ratings, these aren't like 1 or 2, these are all 4, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 6, is going to get me a total of like 10 tier 2 stones. I need another 290. So I've got 60 souls I'm selling. I need to multiply that by like 1,000 to get anywhere near 1 soul that I'm going to be able to upgrade on 1 champion. It needs to change. The rates are just not good enough. The whole system is too low. It's too bland. It's a derelict of odds. Just give us a base. I think starting with improvements to the Iron Twins odds, and also, more importantly, actually having it so that when I do Iron Twins, this is not a replacement. It should be at stage 15, I have a 50% chance to get essence, and of that essence, I have a chance to roll the range. Now, if you want to drop the number you get because you want to like balance it out a little bit, that's fine. But I shouldn't lose my soul coins because I got 4 essence, because that's really bad. But there you go, guys. I'm not going to rant anymore about the soul system. I could do a whole video on it. In fact, I already have in the past. So it's not like for all those people in commenters that say all you do is nerf Artak and you don't talk about the big issues. Go check out the previous video because I'll pin it over there. You can have a look at it. The video that I gave suggestions and feedback about Iron Twins, about the fact that people would stop playing it, that was done like 6 months ago. And I still think all the same issues apply. So if you are going for Artak, good luck. I'm on the fence. I don't know whether I'm going to go for 5 and 2. We'll probably figure it out in stream. I will be streaming tonight at around about 8 p.m. So by the time this video goes out, it's probably not going to be too long, maybe like an hour after this video goes out. So yeah, come hang out on this channel. There'll be a live link. I'll put it up in the description as well. You can come hang out. We'll probably make a decision then as to whether or not we go for the Artak. I'll also be pulling a few of my prism shards. We've got a few more pulls here to see if we get any more out of this prism system. So yeah, come hang out. There you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Good luck, and I'll catch you in the next video.